situation right now through a lot of the lower Mississippi Valley, especially the state of Mississippi. A lot of chainsaws cutting up trees. A lot of trees are down. It honestly looks like tornado damage in a lot of spots, but that came from ice. Freezing rain. That's the thing where it looks like it's rain when it's falling out of the sky, and it is liquid, but then it just freezes on contact. And all of a sudden you got a ton of ice everywhere, and it's really heavy, so you end up with power outages because trees fall on power lines. Power lines just come down by themselves. This was storm chaser Reed Timmer a couple of hours ago. Listen to this.
Right now, things are pretty bad here. It's still cold, about 20 degrees, but we are clearing this road right here, and we'll continue to advance.
Yeah, guess what? We're going to talk to Reed right now. Somehow he's got a good signal out there. And Reed, thanks a lot for popping on the show tonight. I've been following your updates, and man, it's just like, it looks like an apocalypse out there. I don't think people realize like how bad a big ice storm can be. I imagine this is going to take a really long time to recover from, huh?
Oh, yeah, this is probably one of the most destructive storms I've ever chased, just because of how widespread it is across northern Mississippi. Every single tree getting knocked down, over an inch of ice accretion that happened. And I barely made it into Oxford the night of the event when it first started happening. I had to drive about 7 miles an hour from Memphis to Oxford. It took me 4 hours to get down there. Power flashes illuminating the sky, and then thunder and lightning came, and we had thunder, freezing rain all night into the next morning, and woke up and just saw trees falling on cars. You couldn't travel anywhere. And now in Oxford, there are gas shortages, food shortages as well, and it looks like we have a prolonged period of cold ahead too, which is just making things a lot worse.
I know you guys are out there trying to help people, kind of the same thing you do after a tornado hits. Of course, most people probably know you best from your tornado chasing, but here you are in the middle of an ice storm, and there's probably a lot of similarities that you notice. You know, I'm just curious, like, what it's actually like there on the ground. Like, when you're looking at how people have been affected by this, like, what are the biggest things that people need after an ice storm, you know, say compared to, like, after a tornado hits? Is there anything unique about it?
Well, there definitely are a lot of differences between a tornado and this ice storm, because the tornado is such a discrete path, just a narrow path of damage. So you can access the damage path from outside, and the infrastructure isn't impacted outside of the damage path. So gas, food, supplies, the roads are also passable outside of the tornado damage path. This one's a lot more widespread. The roads are largely impassable, and you also have the extreme cold. It got down to about 10 degrees last night. We had to do some wellness checks out there last night and take out some trees that were blocking roads and driveways. Some elderly people needed some help as well, and that's what we've been doing all day today as well. Just we had about 200 addresses to check on, and we could only get to about 5 of them today just because the roads were so difficult to travel on and limited resources. And then we started running out of gas, and gas was not available in Oxford. I had to go all the way down to Canton, Mississippi to find gas to get to the south of the freezing rain line. But it's remarkable too how narrow horizontally that freezing rain line is, and you definitely had to have the perfect balance of the warm nose above, the sub-freezing layer right at the surface, or it would have fallen as sleet or been a little bit too warm for rain off to the south. So as I was driving south, as soon as I exited the freezing rain line, it was a very sharp boundary to where things improved.
So I know you're really familiar with this area. I'm sure you've been storm chasing down there countless times during tornado season. And, you know, one thing that I think is unique about that area as it pertains to severe weather is, like, you know, people would rather chase out in the plains because you can actually see to the horizon. You know, down in like Mississippi, Alabama, places like that, you've got so many trees around, and so it makes it like dangerous to chase tornadoes. But the fact that there are so many trees around, maybe you can talk a little bit about the types of trees that there are, just the general like vegetation around that area, because I'm sure you know it pretty well.
Yeah, that has definitely made things difficult here in terms of the impacts of the ice storm, because it's so forested. There's also hills in Oxford, which is a very beautiful place as well. But the terrain is very complicated out there, and it's sheer ice on the roads as well, because it's been so cold afterwards. So it's impossible to get up hills unless you have four-wheel drive and high traction tires. And there's a lot of trees down, power lines everywhere. So it's a very dangerous situation. And And the forecast of a crippling ice storm definitely came to fruition in Oxford. It was a threat to life and property. It was overwhelming out there. And another big problem is that so many people are without power. Really, the only place that has power is the Hampton Inn Hotel and the True Hotel across the street on the east side of Oxford. And so just everybody without power, being very cold. A lot of generators aren't working that are out there. So I started listening to the people talking, where there were about 200 people outside a Waffle House, which was serving to-go orders. And people were saying that they were cold, they had no food, and didn't have a lot of options out there. The cell signal was pretty low. So you could tell that it was becoming a bad situation fast.
Yeah, I'm curious how people are staying warm in this. I mean, are they just waiting it out and hoping that it gets better before it gets worse? Like, have you come across people that have like any hacks for staying warm inside a home when your electricity is out or anything like that?
Yeah, there are people that are leaving their crock pot on for a while, and that will release some heat. There are a lot of fireplaces as well. But there's a lot of failed heating systems also, because I think that they don't have a lot of opportunity to test those survival items when they're out there. So there definitely has been some problems with that, because you can't really prepare for a storm of this magnitude in the Deep South just because they don't happen very often. I think the last time an ice storm even close to this magnitude was 1993, and maybe another one back in the early 80s. And both of those were nothing like this event. And so it's so cold afterward. That's the big deal, is it looks like it's going to be below freezing for another week ahead as well. And we had a little bit of sublimation of the ice today when the sun came out, and that opened up some of the main roads. But for the most part, the back roads are still largely impassable in Oxford.
Just throwing meteorology terms around without explaining it. Come on, Reed. Sublimation. Sublimation. That's when it goes from the solid state to the gas state without going to the liquid state in between. I'm sorry, I'm just goofing with you. But hey, listen, I mean, just looking at some of this video, it really is just completely outrageous. The crazy thing about it is that it actually is pretty beautiful. Like, I know that sounds bad to say, but it's picturesque. An ice storm, everything is glistening, but the amount of damage it does really is pretty crazy. And just seeing that, I feel like a lot of people get it mixed up a little bit. Like, it gets confusing, right? Freezing rain versus sleet. We got a lot of sleet up here in the Northeast, luckily, but talk a little bit about the difference between freezing rain and sleet and what makes this so dangerous.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, you're right. A lot of times extreme nature is kind of associated with a dichotomy. That it's beautiful, but also it leaves behind a dark side that is the damage. And the same goes for tornadoes. A lot of times they're very beautiful, lit up by the sun, or they're a beautiful form of nature, but they leave behind devastation. And the same goes for this ice storm. It was beautiful with all the ice glistening in the sun, but then you see the damage and that dark side right behind all of that glisten. And you see all the trees down and the homes destroyed and people suffering, and definitely makes you, realize that this extreme nature leaves behind such bad devastation. But further north, where the sleet fell, that could give you a lot of traction, and so that can be kind of a saving grace during these ice storms. If that warm nose gets a little bit weaker, or you get a colder a layer below the warm nose, that'll result in sleet. That's what happened to my mom's place out in upstate South Carolina. She just got about 3 inches of sleet. But if that warm nose is a little bit more prominent and that fell all as freezing rain, that devastation would have happened there as well. And it's such a narrow zone where it's pure freezing rain, because you have to have the perfect balance between that above freezing air just above the ground and the below freezing air at the surface. And when I was driving from Memphis down to Oxford at the peak of the storm, it was 14 degrees in Memphis. And when I got to Oxford, it was 29 degrees, thunderstorms, pure rain coming down, super cooled water, freezing on impact. And that's the worst case scenario for these ice storms.
Yeah, I saw some of those lightning strikes within some of the mixed precip too. That's always interesting to see. All right, well, I got you here. Let's prognosticate a little bit about this upcoming weekend storm. I know you've been busy with the ice storm and everything, but I would guess you've probably taken a peek at the forecast models at some point. There's a buzz about this, upcoming storm, for the possibility of the Northeast. And correct me if I'm wrong. If you haven't looked at the models, we don't have to do this. But I got the Euro and GFS. I've got the surface maps, and then I've also got the 500 millibar vorticity. So if you got any thoughts on this thing, I think it's too early, obviously, to know what's going to happen. But do you think it's worth the buzz? There's some model agreement here, I feel like.
I actually haven't looked at the forecast models for that one yet. We were doing all the search and rescue today, and I was focused on this storm, but I have heard about it. I've been hanging out with storm chasers all day today, and they were talking about how there could be a storm for the south once again. A couple days ago, I did look at it, and it looked like the superstorm. They're off the southeast with a big surface flow, but I imagine it's probably changed in the last couple of days.
Yeah. I'm going to do an in-depth segment on this coming up. I'm sorry. I totally made assumptions about that. But yeah, I mean, honestly, this thing's going to be a beast. It looks like it's going to be pretty strong. It's just going to be a matter of how close does it get to the coast. And as you well know, no way to know that right now. Reed Timmer, storm chaser, friend of the show, new friend of the show. Thanks for popping on tonight. And, it's been really insightful following your updates throughout this whole event. So we appreciate it, Reed. We'll do it again sometime.
Thank you so much for having me. Never stop chasing.
There you go.